Well, firstly, thank you for the invitation. And I'm going to be quick because you've got a lot of things to do. Go back to the Greyhound Bay. I thought today I will speak because of a community is the theme. I'll speak one about global, and then the second one, I'll speak when we are there. Right. The first one I'm going to speak is actually in Kenya. Currently, I'm working on it. I actually work both of them at the moment, both of projects alive. So, is that right? Sorry, am I not getting this right? Ah, okay. Oops, go back. Okay, the first one, the interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary project in Kenya. We all worked certain ways, but this is one of the genuine multidisciplinary work with 5 of my colleagues from Robert Gordon University, and opened my eye as an architect what I was missing. And I'm still not hung off this. Am I doing something wrong here? I'm going backwards, right? Yeah, okay, sorry. Like every research, it starts with the problem. What was the problem? In this case, the problem is the growing health public concern due to climate change, increased temperature and heat waves. So I am, in summary, looking at heat stress. And Africa is, of course, one of those places getting the most of it. But I would like you to take your attention, maybe the bottom bit, that the people who has contributed least to the climate, and they get the worst problem. So I'm sure many of you know what the health, stress, and health and well-being implications to this. And I don't want to really read this, but you'll have lots of problems from muscle spasms, head fatigue, headache, all sorts of things that happening in this part of the world. So that was the main and the health and well-being impacts that we were going to investigate as a multidisciplinary group. Am I doing something wrong? So who are the stakeholders and beneficiaries? Obviously, we are going in a country. We have to have some kind of partner, which is a university called Tom Mboya, probably a 2-year-old university. And then we have the people who are living in these new settlements, and there are landowners, actually quite similar to Scotland. And then we have to make an agreement with landowners, with the people, and then we have to really rely on the university staff to take us around and make agreements, and that they're actually happy to participate in this project. There is lots of ethics issues. It's not just being there, but almost a 2-year project that is a continuing collecting data, and how do we use that data? And what was the really end, what we were going to do with that data is we were going to go back to Kenyan government and actually give our findings and hope that there will some of the lessons learned will be applied. Right. Either I don't know, where is the guy said, I'm an idiot. I think maybe I am.
Right, want to try? Yeah,
Is that right?
that's it.
That one, right. Okay, this is forward, right?
That one, yeah.
Right,
That one.
okay. So what's the project? The project is geothermal cooling. So nothing new about that. We've been using in Scotland, we use in the rest of the part, but I will just go through with you how it started. So obviously, first thing in a research project, like everybody will know, the first thing you do is to find out what has been done before, what we call literature review. And basically, the idea is you take air from outside, go some depth, hope that, and then you calculate velocity and the travel distance, and you bring into the house. So the idea is that the length of the velocity that I should bring the outside temperature down. But then how long that pipe needs to be, what speed do I need? So we did some computer models before we even went there. So it was you can do with a straight pipe, and you can do sort of separate pipe works. So that needed some computer simulation, and I need to find out the length of the path and the speed of the air, incoming air, so that I can design a right system. Now, we take the 27, which you will see on the top, as the ground temperature. I haven't measured it yet, but I've sort of started with the worst case scenario, something like Bangladesh, and looked at it, what happens to the temperature. So all I can say here is basically, doesn't matter winter, summer, or serious, the ground temperature is the same. I think Scotland, between 9 to 11 degrees. So you will later find out what that is in Kenya. Then I need to look at it. What is the speed, the velocity that I need to take? So it looks like I've tried 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it looks like slower is going to give me the most cooler air. Then I looked at it, different formulations, because I sort of calculated that I needed 40 to 50 meter length for each house. And from that, I looked at it different. Obviously, they need to be turning and twisting, and what impact that was having. So I established, before I went, some kind of, if you like, parameters. What the length should be, and velocity, as I said, and the depth. So I've looked at it about 1.5 to 2 meter. So I don't really want to bore with you. I did very different speeds, temperatures within the 1 hour, 12 hour, 24 hours, and try to find out what is the size and the diameter and make of the pipe. So many things that I really needed to take account, but I wanted to go there and first have a theoretical understanding and then the application of that theory. You will say what other people were doing. Well, for example, we had a computing expert who was going to do a predictive model, if you like. Say, look at the mortality rate, hospitals and other, and then what will happen in 2030, 40, and 50. So we use the machine learning, artificial intelligence, so we will have something to give the Kenyan government. And then we wanted to know the age groups, the other social status, gender, education level, marital status, household size, mass, everything else. That was one of the, again, that the professors were taken into account. And we had a mechanical engineer who were dealing with the computer assimilations. So that was really critical to understand the whole picture. Then in the first round, 3 of us went to Kenya, Nairobi, after a 7 hours long, fantastic journey. We went to the Lake Victoria, which is called Homa Bay, and as you can see, Tom Mobile University is a new university. We met our colleagues who are going to help us, because without them, it's impossible. The first thing we did is, I did, dig my grave and really looked at it, 1.5, and 2 meter depth, what the temperature is. So, and overnight, that was enough for me to say, right, that was enough because I didn't need months or weeks. It was good enough to establish, which I did establish. And you can see it, the temperature, this is a day from something like 35 outside, we were going down to 25. So I was so relieved because there was a 10-degree differences. That's what exactly I needed. That doesn't mean, of course, the whole thing is going to go 10 degrees. I'll be lucky to get 2 or 3, but this is a good starting point. Then, with the help of the couple of students from the Tom Mobile University, we went to the settlements and shanty towns that we already identified, agreed and written that we will do that research. I'm not going to lie, there's a little bit money exchange took place. And then we had to meet the landowners, because remember, I'm going to dig 2 meter, 40 meter long hole, somebody's land. And had to think about health and safety because all the kids and all that running around. So that was a, like 2 days work. I got a real suntan and burned. I didn't realize how heat can affect all day. Anyway, these are the places, these are the houses. Basically, they are known as 10 square meter, 9 square meter, 3 by 3, and made 2 rooms. But I was amazed on the right-hand side how actually people managed to do a nice living room. And these are one of the settlements at the bottom middle. So these are groups of either U-shaped, but always attached terrace, if you like, houses. And none of them is owned by the occupier, always owned by landowner. Rents are about a year, 30 to 40 pounds. And most of those people don't have work. And then I need to set up the equipment. I really need to think about where would I put them. People won't remove them. They need to be hidden, but they also shouldn't be exposed direct sun. As you can see, all the houses has a little bit overhang, and that made incredible temperature differences. In the walls, maybe say 30, 35 degrees, but on the roof was 70-degree external temperatures. And then I carefully located this tiny tag is called, this yellow monitoring equipment, which downloads the whole thing. And when I go again in October, I will download that to my computer. But that wasn't good enough, of course. We also needed the one handheld by the Kenyan students every week, going to the place and taking actual moisture and other measurements, which had to be written down. So this is actually looks easy, but it's a big undertaking. On the top right, you can see all the equipments for 7 houses we had. Then started digging, and as we did our calculations, we've gone about 1.8 meter deep with our, and we get some local Kenyan contractors. And everybody got excited, but we did the whole work in a day, which I was relieved because so many kids and others running around, so we buried the whole pipes. In this work, I know that the clay pipes are other much better, but in this one, we just used available 4-inch standard PVC pipes. This is the outlet you can see. On the other side, it's coming inside the house, which I left it like that. When I go in October, which is about 3 weeks time, I will take this cap off and put my extract fan onto it. The next thing, of course, these places don't have electricity. So how are we going to do that? I did look at natural convection, but it wasn't good enough. It was so minimal, and it wasn't going to do any job. My mechanical engineer friend tried to buy some Chinese made, but they were so noisy. But the worst of it, they were so fast, all I would get 35-degree inside. So I needed something small. So we decided to design it ourselves. I have a clever friend, called them in, and we used a 3D point print and designed this one. And we are trying with 3 or 4 different speeds, as I said to you. And then we also designed a little solar panel. By the way, this has cost us about £35. So I've tested, that will give me a 60-hour of battery. So what I'm trying to say, there is an actual battery in the 3D box. And then say overnight, or the sun doesn't shine, or whatever it is, it will keep us going a couple of days. And all I need the overnight, obviously. And then that end bit there is going to lock into the area I did. So I'm going to do 3 houses with different speeds. And the critical thing that they make no noise. So hopefully nobody will take and annoy them. So it was all that. And then I will go again March next year, put that down, all that information. However, when I first went down there, I realized actually computer models shows 3-degree reduction. But like performance in real life is different, I thought we might get less than that. So I thought we need to do something else. So, and the first thing hit me when I got into these houses is the actually solar gain from the roof, because this house is made of single metal roof and walls, and floor is concrete. So it was a huge amount of heat was coming from the ceiling. So I thought that there is something that we need to do on the roof. But as you can see, the structure of the roof, I couldn't really put another skin or insulation or inside taking people out. That wasn't realistic. So the best thing is to do is actually painting. That's been already done, which is basically, you know, from USA to Australia. There is a white paint that you'll use, but I find another product that oops, gone all together. Yeah, another product here. The cork spray paint insulation. You can see this is actually on a heat and a piece of ice that I am going to experiment basically that. So next thing is, of course, this is a research project. We had only 35,000 pounds. How do I convince the cork spray people to take Kenya on their own expense and do that? So I'm hoping that I'll be managing that. Two of people are coming. I might go even myself to do a one-day course. If we can't afford it, I'll do the spray myself, 3 houses. And then I'm hoping the combination of this, both systems, I should get between 3 to 5 degree reduction. But obviously, not just that, but also making a year questionnaire and then getting our computer expert to looking at, as I said to you, from mortality rate to hospital intake, to find out what degree temperatures changes, what impact it would have, but also I've arranged 10 manufacturers. I find out in Kenya there are 2 roof production manufacturers, which perhaps we could actually apply a paint system or some kind of an insulation system onto the product. Furthermore, we left, or British left, lots of existing buildings, a single story, which is asbestos. I know that kind of a paint insulation can keep the asbestos in place rather than knocking them. So that's the next one. So we've got a couple of ideas. Anyway, I don't want to go that asbestos, but going back to this combination of geothermal and the roof spray, we are hoping to achieve some decent outcome from this. And then we will create, so what we're going to do, obviously we need data, 2 years comments to people. We need to get a predictive model of temperature levels, activity, sleep, cooling behaviors, many things that other colleagues will be helping me with. So that is the sort of, I'm coming towards the end of my talk. That was me at Global, but also we've got a community resilience and adoption project that 4 o'clock in Greyhound Bay Center. I will also speak about that.
I chose Homo sapiens stupidus as the title of this talk, to reflect that our wisdom, which has created the life so good that you can all be here, at the same time as destroying the planet. You know, how do we do both things? So just to illustrate that, I'd like you to, for a moment, forget your background of what you know of life or biology or anything related, and just look at the world as it actually is. What you find is that every organism, every animal, plant, fungus, unicellular organism, bacteria, all of them, they all are there to get food, shelter, and living space at the same time. And yet each remains part of the system that provides food, shelter, and living space for all. All live in their own niche. So it is a huge, life is a huge cooperative system. Everybody is there for everybody else. Of course, within that, we are brought up, now you can go back to reality, to your background. We are brought up to believe that life is a struggle, that those successful in the struggle survive and multiply. The Darwinian idea, survival of the fittest, is a massive background to our thinking. But Darwin never used survival of the fittest as a phrase. Still less did he follow what Tennyson then described, nature red in tooth and claw. These things are gross exaggerations. That view has turned what would have been a cooperative approach to nature and to each other into a battle. In our Western culture, that battle is fundamental. We are brought up to have dominion over all of life, to go forth and multiply. And all I can say now to the Almighty is, job done. We've succeeded beyond all measure. We've covered the earth and we've created what is here. That's the big picture. And of course, every plant, animal, protozoan and bacteria and so on, they do have to compete with each other. But that is micro competition. It is within the big frame of a big cooperation. So we have those opposing views between cooperation and a battle. Scientifically, both are equally valid. Both are perfectly sound science. So we could use our science to deal and live by the cooperation instead of the battle. We can do that with the tools we've created. Science is nothing but another tool. It follows the harnessing of fire and the invention of the stone axe, and eventually it led to science as a tool for how we think about going about our future. And we could twist them into the new direction that we now know. And I think I'm here preaching to the converted, of course. Ecological design is exactly that. But that isn't how most of the world lives. So we could make a better world. And as SEDA has been very active in land use and matters of that sort, and I'm interested in agriculture anyway, I've used agriculture as the prime example of what I'm saying. The addition of fertilizers was invented in 1843 by Liebig and Rothamsted Experimental Station, and it's been applied exaggeratedly. We have done the same as any other animal, got a good idea, applied it, and used it as part of the so-called struggle for existence. But we overdo it, and we've overdone that one. And I now would say agriculture was a huge experiment. It fed us, but it failed. And that needs to change. And we can change in that sort of way throughout everything you can think of. Appropriate medicine, you can build beautiful buildings like this. They did before we had our high technology. I don't know how old this one is. So we have now the possibilities of an agroecology that replaces chemical agriculture. There's a huge science of appropriate farming to be pursued. So it's a big theme. I've opened up perhaps a lot of can of worms, a lot of thoughts, and it's more complicated than what I've tried to say. That is essentially all I have to say. I've written a longer paper on this. I've put it over there for you to take a copy if you like, and we can have a discussion on the whole issue. But this notion of cooperation versus battle is the one to take home. So let's have some discussion and questions. Thank you.
Any questions?
Deathly silence. Yes, of course.
Actually, we have quite a tight schedule, but we do have a little bit of time for questions for Ulrich. In the meantime, because of the time shift we had earlier, the tech Megler is going to put up a slide of the big conversation film about adaptation as a QR code up on the screen so that you can watch at your own leisure. So that's just to inform you what's coming up on the screen. But yes, any questions for Ulrich? I see hands shooting up already.
Ulrich, great provocation as usual. Can you give us any examples of agriculture working with nature in a way that we in the construction industry can immediately learn from?
In the construction industry, the agricultural example is easy. How to transfer it? Well, you need lectures like you've just had. You can make buildings that heat and cool themselves without very much difficulty. In agriculture, the equivalent is to ask the question, how is it that most plants, most animals, most things in nature are healthy and happy most of the time, without pesticides, without agrochemicals? And there is a lot of biochemistry that actually describes that. Now, I'm not going to go into that at all. Just take it from me, there is. The basic theme behind it is that plants actually are not good for pests to devour. Plants starve their pests and disease organisms if they are growing healthily under a good nutritional regime. And they do not have a good nutritional regime if you put in too much fertilizer and then beef it up with pesticides following it and so on. They do have, if you do an agroecological approach, where you don't exaggerate in any of those things, and every organic farmer knows, I think, they don't really suffer much from pests and diseases. So what is the equivalent in the construction industry? Well, I don't know. I've done something towards it in my own house, so it heats itself more or less on a reasonably sunny day. It can be 0 or 2 degrees outside and 21 inside. And I think you all know how to do that. So yes, there are lots of parallels one can make, but they don't directly transfer the technology.
Hello. I just want to say that there is a correlation between agriculture and buildings, ecological buildings, and that they're both suffering at the moment. They're both suffering from the extremes of climate change. Witness the terrible yields that a lot of organic growers have had this year from our cold summer. And I'm sure that's going to be a knock-on effect into how we look at our buildings as well. So they suffer the same issues, the same global issues face both farming and the construction industry.
Yes, that's true, of course. And as you brought up climate, which I didn't, could have done, the whole climate debate, and can we meet net zero, whatever that means, I don't think it means anything, but the whole debate is but a symptom of us doing things wrong. We're never going to solve the climate crisis by just doing yet more of the sort of technology that's created.
A question here?
Very quick question or comment. I read a book by Colin Tudge a few years ago, Genes Are Not Selfish and People Are Nice, which sort of, to me, weaves together some of the themes about today, about how community is not the adversarial, it's not meant to be the tooth and claw, all the Lord of the Flies sort of thing. It can be about cooperation and working alongside nature and those sorts of things. And it really struck me at the time. I don't know if you know the book or know Colin Tudge's work.
I sent him the paper that's on the table. There's 3 more papers following it. And he said, keep me informed. And I said the same to him. So yes, his book, what is it? The Great Rethink, actually follows a series of such books going back to the 1950s. And some of the heroes that Stanley talked about, Ian McCarg and so on, had the same ideas. Colin Tudge is a remarkably good writer and a good journalist, and he understands the science, and he's put that book together very well indeed. So I thoroughly recommend it as the most recent of the books that say we've got to have a total rethink. I call it a revolution. I call for a revolution.
Thank you. You're the first person today that has. It's really appreciated. Ulrich, sustainability is about making tomorrow better than today. Not Brundtland, it's actually about making it better, I believe. I believe education is about the same thing. It's in order to make tomorrow better than today. Do you have any underlying principles that you think every 5-year-old or 6-year-old should understand in order to aid that process and make the world better by 2050?
I don't think you can spell it out easily as a small number of 10 commandments or whatever. But I do think you can spell out the change in attitude, and it can start at 5-year-olds. The situation now is so urgent, I just put this as an aside, that it's too late to educate the 5-year-olds, much as we have to. The first thing to do is to educate each other, because it's existing politicians who need to know what you now teach 5-year-olds. Yes, there are general principles, and actually we need, right from the beginnings of education, going right on throughout life, to, as Greta Thunberg put it, tell it as it is. I think that's a very profound sentence. It doesn't answer your question. You can't have 10 principles just telling it as it is. But I have tried to list, and that's in that paper, I've tried to list the ways in which we counter nature. They are all habits, and there are 9 or 10 of them. And I've made the case that my list of 9 is not solid. It's fluid. It could easily be 10 immediately. One of them can be doubled. And you can go on doing that. You will have a fluidity of answers. But principles are, don't do anything in excess, and we do almost everything in excess. Realize that economic growth, which is in excess, is a gigantic, a hyper-growth mania as Herman Daly called it, and then respond to what feedbacks you can get. We live in a world of positive feedbacks. Economic growth makes for more economic growth. A good invention makes for more of the invention. We need to live in the much richer world of negative feedbacks. It sounds like an oxymoron. That's because we think of anything negative as bad. Negative feedback is a boon. It's wonderful. And it's what we need to depend on. So there's a whole lot of principles of that sort. And you can go on, I think, expanding them way beyond the 9 I give there.
Hands up those of you who were at the big conversation. Right, some of you, brilliant. That means most of you haven't heard of this, so this is all new. Back in February and March this year, SEDA was awarded some money from Scottish Government to run a series of sessions all about the just transition in construction and the built environment. And that led on to a consultation that Scottish Government's doing on just transition in construction and the built environment. I work for an architect's practice called ARC Architects, and my director, Tom Morton, who was here yesterday, was the one who helped to put together this series of 5 days of conversation. And the 5 days, all held at the engine shed over in Stirling, focused on 5 different aspects, all to do with the just transition. First day was to do with adaptation, set the scene. If you were there, it was one of the grimmest days of my life, because we had people like Kat Payne, who was here yesterday from Sniffer, saying things as they are. We had Scott Macaulay, who came along, who told us that the construction industry has got 700 days left of its carbon budget before the construction industry has blown its carbon budget. It was horrifying. But then we moved on to day 2 and day 3 and day 4. Day 2 was about materials. What are the materials that we need to start coming up with to deliver the just transition? Day 3 was about skills. What are the skills? Where are the skills shortages? Where do we need to put our efforts into developing the skills we need to deliver the just transition, which is particularly pertinent in an area like the Northeast? Day 4 was about money, because none of this happens without sorting out money. And it was fascinating in some of the breakout groups to hear that, and my question earlier about can we do what we need to do within our existing capitalist system, came from a series of conversations on the money day where almost everybody is happy to tweak the existing system because we are all so scared of radical change. There are certain things we can do within the existing economic system, but as Ulrich just said, if we try and use the tools and the systems that have got us into this situation in the first place, we're not going to get that far. Day 5 was a wrap-up day, and it was amazing. We had people from the Danish government building standards division come across, and they set out how in Denmark, very similar size to Scotland, 5 million people-ish, their building regulations have gone through a process where they've said, okay, Denmark's this big and our emissions are this big. And in 30 years' time, we want them to be this big. So how do we get from there to there? And they said, okay, we've got 12 industries. You're doing that, you're doing that, you're doing that, you're doing that. Construction, you're doing that. Okay, brilliant. Construction's got to do this. What are we doing between now and 30 years' time? Okay, 2 years' time, we're going to do this. 4 years' time, we're going to do this. And they set it all out. And the best thing about that plan is businesses, the people who we're relying on to deliver the jobs, the skills, the materials, all of the things that we need to achieve these carbon emissions, they don't have this 2, 3, 4, 5-year political economic cycle that we have to deal with. They've got a 40 or 30-year plan. So businesses are now investing in stuff that they know is still going to be relevant in 10 years' time. And just having that clarity, that stability was fantastic to see. And we all came away at the end of the big conversation days absolutely buoyed. Going back to day 1, the adaptation day, We were going to show the film today. We don't really have time. There are a series of 10 videos on LinkedIn and YouTube, which are just short extracts of each day. And the reason I'm going back to day one is watch day one, but don't be put off. Just keep on going. Watch all the other videos because it gets better and better and better. And the reason that's important, the reason it's relevant to this conference is resilience feeds on hope. Without hope, there is no resilience. If you don't have hope, confidence in yourself, your community, your neighborhood, your community council, your local authority, your government, you have no hope. And where's your resilience? Where does your resilience come from? You need to have confidence in those things. The big conversation delivered a picture of hope. And at the end of the 5 days, having listened to the Danish people and Patrick Harvey coming along and giving all the big words, there was a real sense of hope. We put this film together, Tom and his colleagues put this film together. And I think about 4 weeks after the big conversation, the Butte House Agreement was scrapped. The 2030 targets were scrapped. So as an industry, as a group of people in this room today, our resilience is potentially going to be rocked by this. So we need to rely on each other. Events like this are incredibly important because it's through talking to each other, sharing ideas, pushing really good stuff forward that our resilience will not be diminished. Watch those videos, but keep on coming back to the idea that even though we are scrapping these things, there is hope. We do have resilience amongst each other. Stay strong, people, stay strong.
Thanks, Sam. And we'll just be very quick, and we want to hand over to you for comments. But one of an underlying sort of themes in organising today was about challenging the status quo. And I think, as Ulrich said, actually, and referencing Greta's comments, and he didn't say it, but the sort of blah, blah, blah. We've all been to so many events, which is more blah, blah, blah. And they can be great speakers, and we can really enjoy getting there, but we leave the day and we wake up the next morning and we just keep on doing what we're doing. And words like sustainability and resilience even have become very much blah, blah, blah. It's just doing more of the same things and ticking the boxes and so on. And so just as to close out from today, would be really interested in just what people think about what they can take from what we've learned today about challenging the status quo in our day-to-day lives. I mean, Sam, you mentioned, can the economy as we have it, deal with this? Sue Rose said, we need to evolve beyond just adaptation and what we do with that. Susan Krumdrick online, being compelled to value life. We do value engineering in construction, but what do we value? Surely we should be valuing life in there somewhere. And Janice also, that no point about doing sustainability and resilience if we're still spewing out toxic chemicals into everything we do in our life, including what we put in our bellies and put on our skins and stuff. So where do we need to, really seriously challenge the status quo, not just use it as a tagline, but actually make changes in our behavior, in our work, and how we engage with other people. So I don't know if Sam's got any thoughts on that, but if anybody in the audience would like to make a comment towards that, any show of hands?
Sam, you say we have to have confidence in each other, in our community, in the government. How can we have confidence in a government who brings in mandates that we're not allowed to build wood-burning stoves in houses in rural areas that will be cut off? I mean, how can you have confidence in people who are that basically, they really do not value human lives to do that?
I completely agree. And I think I might not have been clear, Sue. I'm not saying have confidence in the government, but we have to have confidence in our own community. This is probably one of the strongest communities I have, to know who's talking sense. I come along and listen to, obviously my wife, but listening to people like Ulrich talking and Susan, and my marker of what is the right thing to do is usually set by the SEDA conference every year. And these are incredibly important for me. So I don't have particular confidence in the government, particularly when it pulls the rug out from under our collective feet repeatedly. And certainly not this Scottish government. But you lot, I love you.
I wonder whether I may add a comment here. I doubt that it's an accident. If it is an accident, it's a good one in a sense. We're meeting in Aberdeen. It is the oil centre of Britain. Oil is now traded worldwide in petrodollars. And it is the trade and the international political force of the dollar that is controlling it. So we can all have faith in each other, but if we want the government to change, the people have to change first. It's the only way to do it. I would have thought, maybe wrong. In a way, I hope I am wrong, because if we want to change 60 million people, it's a big task, whereas 6,000 in the Houses of Parliament is a little easier. But I think we shouldn't forget that just outside the windows here is the oil, which is driving the whole thing in the wrong direction. And Just Stop Oil, who tragically, its main spokespeople have been imprisoned. That shows the level of the government ignorance, an inexcusable ignorance. I just want to add that comment.
Anyone else? Quickly, yep.
Hello again. I just think that the more we go and the only way is to look at our communities, work as a community. I spoke earlier about a farm who's struggling, the growers are struggling, what can we do? For once, usually there's a problem, I'm going, oh yeah, we can do this, we can do that. And I'm completely stumped, but the only glimmer I have is, let's work as a community. Let's work as a community to get this farm, to get this growing happen again. To fight to try and overcome the problems we have facing, the farmers are facing with unpredictable climates and the global economy and the rest of it. So community.
I think a few years ago, when Howard Liddell, one of the co-founders of SEDA, gave a presentation, he put up a lovely slide which had 9 circles on it, which all depicted different scales of doing stuff from me doing stuff, us doing stuff, your street, etc., all the way up to the globe. And he said, there's a point at which there's a balance between it being big enough to have an impact, but small enough for folk to still have control over it. And that scale was about community scale, about neighborhood scale. And from the stuff we've seen coming through for retrofit training, for example, in construction in Fife, more and more it's groups of people saying, 5 or 6 of us live in really rubbish houses, it's all the same house, let's do something together. And it's when people get together, there is that bargaining power, there's that purchasing power, but there's also that collective enthusiasm and psychological support for each other to go, okay, it's tough, but let's keep on doing it. There's a scale where these things really work, and the community scale is the scale to do it at, I think.
Very quickly, Gail.
So only to echo that, James Hutton Institute have done research with farming clusters in order for an individual farmer to get together with others, so they have some power with the supermarkets, etc. And that cluster is for about 5 to 6 farms, and that works as a family of farms. Larger doesn't. So brilliant. Echoing what you say.
Thank you, Gail. And yeah, that brings us back to yesterday, isn't it? And all the regenerative thoughts and rethinking from ground up, groundswell, bring it all together.